Hey guys, how's it going? It's Lazy Dev here. I hope you're all doing well. I know in the last video I said I was going to implement the arms as my next move, but actually I ended up tweaking the restaurant model instead. Sometimes when you work on a solo project like this, you kind of just want to change things up or work on something new because it can kind of get stale doing everything on your own. And so basically up until the point where I decided to make this YouTube channel and the point where I actually made that first video, I hadn't touched the restaurant model ever since the first time I made it. And I had basically just been programming this whole time. So because of that, I was just feeling a little bit sick of what I had been doing, wanted to switch it up. So I just decided that I would switch over to the restaurant because with all the debugging I was doing, it was getting kind of, I guess, difficult and borderline annoying when I was moving around in the world and then clipping through things a lot. The scale of the player model versus the scale of the restaurant, it just wasn't big enough for the player model. So that's what I tried to do here. I increased the size of the restaurant and then I did some tweaks to the roof. And so if you guys don't know the software I'm using right now, I'm actually using a software called Blender. It's an open source, free to use 3D modeling application. Industry standards for this kind of thing, they usually use something called Maya, which is basically the same thing, but it's produced by a company called Autodesk. And Autodesk has a couple other 3D modeling softwares that they provide, but basically all of them are subscription based. And so what that means is for basically all of them, I think you pay maybe like a yearly fee as long as you make like over a certain amount of money for the product. And that's basically standard. That's for like other game engines too, like Unity. They do the same thing. But the reason why I chose Blender is because as an indie developer, you don't have any resources. Basically, for most of us, we have nothing. We're just doing this as a hobby. So to kind of avoid that whole headache of not having, or like worrying about licenses and fees in the future, and then also worrying about how does this affect the income I'm making from the game, because I'm nowhere even near thinking about that. I just bypassed all that and went straight to Blender because their whole philosophy is that it's open source and free for anyone to use. And so Blender is really great because basically everything that Autodesk and Maya accomplish in their product, in the Maya product or in the other softwares available from Autodesk, Blender also has that too. And the cool thing about Blender is it kind of tries to take over like all the available 3D modeling software features that are out there right now. So there's also this product called ZBrush, which lets you kind of sculpt your 3D models using like paintbrushes, kind of feeling like you're using clay. Blender has that too, which is really great. So Blender kind of just offers everything that's out there. But the downside for Blender, like the only downside to it really, is the fact that it's not user friendly. So the other products I mentioned, all the Autodesk products in ZBrush, and I think there's also like some kind of specific cloth 3D software out there. They're all very, very, very easy to use. Once you become like familiar with the software, they're very easy to use. The controls feel very intuitive from what I hear. I've never personally used it, but Blender, on the other hand, their tools are not intuitive, and I think like the shortcuts that Blender uses does not match what the industry standard uses. And there's just a lot of kinks in Blender because it is open source, so people are just contributing to it as they go. That make it have like a really steep learning curve. And actually, if you guys want sources for where you can go to learn how to use Blender, I would recommend Blender Guru. And I believe there's also this guy whose tutorial I watched. His name is Ryan King. I would have to double check. I'll link their channels in the description below. But those two are basically how I've gotten all my skills. And obviously, my skills aren't that great because you can see like this. I'm choosing to go low poly, very low effort, easy objects and designs. But those guys, if you follow their tutorials, they're very realistic. And so not only will they teach you how to use Blender, but if you do prefer that kind of realistic style, you can 100% go to their channels. And honestly, I think if you just do probably like if you do 5 of their tutorials, you're going to be really great shape for understanding Blender. And the biggest thing is just being consistent with it. So now to talk about what I'm actually doing, what you're actually watching in the video. So far, I've just been using Blender's Move, Extrude, Bevel, and Inset tools. And these basically move is what, like how I just moved around that cube in the scene. Extrude is what lets you like, let's say you had a side of a cube and you wanted to extend it, but not extend it so that that face itself moved, but like it created a child and then that child got moved up. That's what extend does. So it keeps the original face where it was, but then it creates a second face that actually moves to the position you want. And then inset is what you use when you're on a side and then you want to put a smaller side, basically like a smaller side contained within it. That's how I got that white portion of the cube. And then I believe the last one I mentioned is bevel. Bevel is what I use to create that kind of rounded edge of the rooftops, those two rooftops I made. And then besides that, in the very beginning of the video, I used their reference image in order to put that side image of the McDonald's toy playset. And that's basically going to be what I base my Dirk's Durgers restaurant loosely off. Mine's going to be a very low poly version, but I think you'll definitely be able to see how it's inspired from that photo. And now, like, besides doing the moving, extruding, insetting, and beveling of the model, now I'm actually messing around with the textures of it. So if you guys don't know, texture is what gives an image, or like a model, the actual paint that you see on top of it, the coloring that you see. And so the reason why you might want to use a texture instead of a procedural, like a procedural material, is because when you do the textures, you can paint on it like how I'm doing this, but in texturing, as long as you have the correct UV map, which is what you see on the left side where it's like all those polygons with the thin gray lines, as long as you have the UV map, you could actually exit out of Blender and then just paint it on like in GIMP or Photoshop if you have it available. And so since I didn't want to do that because I just wanted to paint on the surface directly, so that's what I'm doing. I'm using Blender's in-house painter tool to just paint on the mesh, and then that just directly gets linked up to the texture. And so that's basically what I did. I just used those basic tools along with the texture features to get to this point. I also, there was an off-screen recording where I built that sign you see in the left corner. But that's basically all I did, and the video's ending, so I'm going to wrap this up quickly. And I think I'll just close this off by saying I basically just screen recorded me doing a sped up version of the modeling process I went through. But in the future, if you guys want, I can do like more in-depth short tutorials where I'll focus on a single thing that I built inside my Blender file, but then I'll walk through it step by step. And I think in the future, I'll also put on, I think there's some kind of, maybe it's a Blender add-on where it shows the hotkeys that you're pressing on the screen as you're doing it. So I think that'll be helpful. But yeah, there's more things I can do. You guys can leave them in the comments. And if there's any recommendations you have about the model where you think I can make improvements, feel free to leave those too. If you like the video, you can give me a like. And if you feel like you want to subscribe to see more, you're more than welcome to join me on the journey. But thank you for watching. I hope you guys have a great day, great night, wherever you are. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye, guys.